Okay.
Cool. I think I'm live. I think we're live. So,
Okay, we're live.
so
Hello.
welcome. I'm Jeff, as you know, and my
Hmm.
guest today is Chris. Uh, Plague of Arrows on social media. Sparrows
Yeah,
with arrows.
I mean, call me Chris though. I mean, I'm not shy about my name. Like, it's just that's just like the handle I've used forever. So we call him Chris. Chris, or it's probably easiest to address each other like Chris. So Chris or Chris. So you're Jeff. I'm
Okay.
Chris. Yeah.
Well, welcome, Chris. And I figured I'll just let you go ahead and talk. You want to talk about mental health and talk a little bit about your personal journey and story experiences with it?
Yeah, I mean, okay, and I'll preface this by saying, like, just before I say this stuff, I do want to make sure my opinions on this are going to be largely, to be admittedly, are largely anecdotal. I don't claim that I have any like particular, um, I don't have statistical like, I don't have statistical research type things to back up like some of the things I'll probably say, just because like there just isn't any that I've looked for it, and I can't find any like research that was this. But I am someone who comes from a I don't know. I've always been kind of like, I think like a lot of the people in like that, I met you in Paul's Discord thing and everything. I come almost a centerish type position on things. I've always been kind of left leaning until the left went crazy and stuff like that, and blah blah blah. Like I was, I'm a very liberally minded person my whole life, been an artist, and so like as most artists do, tend to be leaning liberal. I and as I do get older, I guess I don't know if it's just that the left has moved that far, or that just like I get older and I get more conservative or something. I don't know, but nonetheless, regardless of any of that, I've always been very anti-socialism, anti-socialist type thing, because I don't see the I think it's silly. It's just like I think socialism is just silly. It's a silly kind of uh, fantastical, like idea that basically, I mean, it requires everybody to basically be acting in the best interests of everyone else and not themselves, and I just don't think that's realistic.
Mhm.
And so I've always been very against that. But like this, in the last years, and I'll go into the whole story. But I just my basic thesis here is that I have come to the conclusion that I think that at least when it comes to to the world of medicine and health, I just don't think that capitalism works for it. I think that I think capitalism is a fine economic system for most everything. I think when it comes to health and mental health, physical health, anything, just don't see any. I don't see any actual advantage in having a profit driven or profit motive. I mean, yeah, we might it might drive people to make things like erectile dysfunction drugs and hair thinning products, things like that. Those things might not get developed in a system in a system that would be more like financed by the government or something like that. But I think the whole system of the insurance thing, the way it's set up and everything, I think it's all predatory. And I just my experiences with this, and I felt this way for a little while before this more recent stuff, but like then what's happened recently has really driven that home for me. So about let's see, I guess going back to right around COVID, right around when COVID started, we I'm married. I have two daughters. At the time I said one. She's now 15, but and I have a 3 month old as well. But back then when COVID was just starting, um, so we had a friend of me and my wife's that was staying with us that been friends of she actually had worked for me. I used to manage movie theaters, and she was an ex movie theater employee of one of the theaters I managed when she was a lot younger and stuff. But she was like in her 30s now, and she had fallen some hard times. We let her move in with us, and I had no idea about any of the issues she had been having. But we went through this like really intense period where she like I was actually very similar to what I noticed, like what you mentioned on the stream with Paul about your about whatever you lived. The guy was like a psychopath, right? Like the guy that was just like that was just like very controlling, and it was very abusive and stuff like that. That's kind of
Oh
what we
yeah,
it's kind of what happened with us
with this girl.
with this girl. Yeah, and man, she went off the deep end though. I mean, at first it was just like the abusive kind of like no, I thought I from what I could tell, like at first I thought it was maybe a narcissistic personality disorder. Like she seemed like she was being really manipulative or thing, but then her stuff got more and more outlandish and crazy, and it was just like I had no idea what was going on, and like until eventually I had to kick her out. I had to to make her leave. I mean, she was like creating severe problems. And before that even happened, though, like my wife started, like, I don't know, she who was very, very much more stressed out by all this than even I was. I was handling a lot better than she was at the time. And she kind of, and she started like, she like, and this made me feel craziest of all, because I felt like, well, there's no, what are the chances that two people would like lose their minds like this? Like, well, it's a long story. It's a long story, but like basically, like, this girl, she had actually told me at one point, and I thought she was joking, that she was like, "Oh yeah, I was diagnosed schizophrenic, paranoid schizophrenic," and like I didn't take it seriously, because first of all, I didn't know what schizophrenia meant.
Mhm.
I don't think most of us do. I think most of us are most of the, at least most people I talk to, their conception of schizophrenia is that of what you see in like movies, like, like Brad Pitt and 12 Monkeys or something like that. Someone who's like, going around acting all twitchy and like in talking has some crazy stuff like that. It isn't come over. You don't ever see it portrayed in a way that, I know that's silly to like, take your cues from some movies like that, but like, what else do we have? You just like, no one talks about what it looks like in real life, at least that I've seen. I'm not saying that nobody does, but I haven't seen it. And so like I found she told me that like way back when, and I didn't take it seriously, because I was just like, oh, whatever. She didn't seem crazy. And but then, towards the end of her stay here, she was accusing me of being a human child trafficker. Told me, it said I was working for the communist government, like the communist Chinese. I was a Chinese communist spy that was doing human trafficking, and all this stuff like that. It was just like, it was bizarre. Like I barely even left the house, let alone like, like I didn't know where she could like even like see this kind of thing. And like, and I thought she was just like, I thought she was making these outlandish accusations because she was trying to like, it was like some sort of bullying tactic or something like that. I didn't understand I didn't understand it really didn't make any sense to me at the time too, because like it didn't benefit her. We were the only benefactors she had. We're the only people that were helping her at all. So it was like really strange that she'd be attacking the people that were helping her. It didn't there was no advantage for her doing this, right? And so I don't know. I feel bad in retrospect now that like I kicked her out and everything, because I didn't understand what was happening. I just thought she was just being, I don't know. I didn't understand situation. I didn't understand that people with this condition could, heard things and like would like, didn't like. I found this out later with my wife. Like my wife started doing the same thing where it manifested her through lots of voices and stuff like that, and she didn't understand the voices. At first, whenever it started with her, she didn't understand the voices were coming from her own head. That's what schizophrenia, I guess, really is. It's like it's the inability.
This was at the same time that this girl was with you.
Is like my theory is that like I think my wife had already had genetically, because like looking back through our lives, I could see things of like warning signs of it. And like my wife is way too old normally to have go into psychosis unless she'd never had before, but she actually had a few like kind of mental breaks in the past. They weren't that severe, and they didn't last a long time. So I didn't know that was like a thing. And I think the stress of having this girl that was like used to, at one point, was considered our best friend that we had, as a couple, like the person that we cared about the most, that besides our family. And like they have this girl just like accusing us both, me and her, of like all these horrible things. I mean, like seriously, like child trafficking and stuff like that. It's like, I mean, for me personally, someone who's extremely family oriented, and like I love my kids more than anything in the world. And I can't stand the thought of anybody doing anything to children, period. And it's very personally very hurtful, like to just for someone to accuse you of something like that. Like it's just like it's so flabbergasted. You just kind of like you don't even know how to respond. You're just like, that's so ridiculous. How do you face that kind of an accusation? Because like you can't. I guess I can't prove it any more than the fact that I can prove where I've been and but it's like.
Did you start to connect it to the schizophrenia at that point?
I did not at that point. I have to admit that I should have, but anyway, so like later on, my wife, like I said, she started like showing all these weird signs too, and I don't know. I feel really dumb about the whole thing, because I feel like I should have really understood that something more was going on, but like I didn't. I don't know. I didn't know how these things worked. I didn't know how to. And so in fact, two people doing it at the same time, I thought my wife was like playing some sort of game too, like because she was like suddenly she didn't want anything to do with me, and I mean, it was very sudden. It was like she started having some acting kind of weird, but then but then like one day, like she went to go visit my parents for Fourth of July weekend, and she didn't call me. We normally we'll keep very close contact, and she didn't call me at all. And so I called her that night, and suddenly she was like, I just don't think we're working out anymore, all stuff. And she didn't sound crazy; she sounded very rational, um, which was very difficult for me to accept or understand like what was happening. I thought she had like just suddenly decided to leave me, and it wasn't until she got back from that trip and everything, and like things like she would have it was kind of like off and on. Like sometimes she would just be like in that state, and sometimes she wouldn't be, and it just over time it fully progressed into the point where literally all she was doing is she would like be she wouldn't even talk to you or look at you. She would just like you if you were in the same room with her, she'd just be looking off the side doing this kind of stuff all the time, like doing her hands and like and hearing things that wasn't there. And it's and so that progressed to the point where she had a real full on freak out where she like kind of like got she wasn't violent towards me per se, but she got in a violent kind of mode where she broke some pictures on the wall and stuff like that, and it was kind of scary. I'd never seen her act like that before, and but she hurt herself, and I convinced her to like, well, let me take her to the hospital because she'd hurt her ankle. She cut it on the glass and stuff like that. I was like, we should go to the hospital, and I've been trying to go to the doctor for a while, but she wouldn't go because she was convinced the doctors were also spies or something like that. I mean, like she had a lot of, I mean, seriously, like, like the voices in her head were telling her all sorts of like, it just her inner voice, not understanding that it's your inner voice that's doing this. And like, and having this, like, it just turns this paranoid, such a bizarre disease. Like it always seems to center around the same kinds of like weird conspiracy type things about the government control and stuff like that. Like it happens. Apparently it's like some of the oldest references I can find to schizophrenia in research had the same thing. Like some I think the first case that like is considered schizophrenia, comes from like France in like the 1700s or something like that. And it was someone who also thought the government was following them. So like that's just weird how it's like going as far back as we know about it. It's always been the same kind of thing, like this fear of control from things like that. And so I couldn't get her to the doctor before.
Was this during 2020 during COVID?
Yes, this was. I mean, this from 2020 all the way to 2021 is whenever it was this period. It was over. It was like 2 years of struggle here, but like it started out like before COVID with the other girl, and then like that I finally had to make her leave around mid 2021, and then like the rest of 2021, like it was like probably 2 or 3 months later, like whenever my wife had this like really bad like psychosis freak out, and I ended up getting her to the hospital. And it was so bizarre. Like whenever we went in there and talked to the doctors and in the hospital, I had no idea what to expect. I had no idea what was really going on. I was just confused and scared. And I mean, like she would talk about she was leaving me all this stuff, but she didn't actually leave. And which I was pretty thankful for, because she was not in her right state of mind. I knew that. I didn't know. It didn't occur to me that it would be schizophrenia. I don't know. That never occurred to me until the doctor actually, they didn't even tell me that. They just wrote it on the chart that she was schizoaffective disorder. And I was like, and it just like all of a sudden, like all hit me. It was like, oh, like she has schizoaffective disorder. Like, why didn't I think of that? Like, why didn't this ever occur to me? Like, why did I think it was something intentional or whatever? It just I feel like I was brainwashed, programmed by media and everything else to think of people who are schizophrenic in this very specific kind of like, Hollywood kind of way. And like, you just don't think about it like that, it being primarily the thing about voices and stuff like that. And like it, as soon as I saw that, it also would make a lot more sense. Right. It's like, oh yeah, she has been talking about hearing things. She thought people were talking to her. And like, I was just like, I don't know. It blew me away. The thing about the hospital though, is that they gave her the diagnosis, and they suggested that like she, they take her to a mental health facility, is what they said. And I was like, okay, like, what does that mean? So like, well, I mean, if she has to sign off on it and she has to do this and that, and she's okay with it, then like, like they'll take her to the hospital and try to get her adjusted on medication or whatever. And so we went through all that. They put her in a hospital. They put her in what they said was a hospital. They put her in this place that was like pretty far out of the city limits. I live in Dallas. It was pretty far outside of Dallas. And they put her in this place, and I had to follow this ambulance that took her there and all this stuff. And then of course, once I got there, they wouldn't actually talk to me or anything like that, because it's like it was COVID rules, and like they had like this whole thing where you couldn't even go into the facility.
Oh.
So it was really messed up. Like they wouldn't tell you anything, they wouldn't let you go and visit them, they wouldn't do anything. But I come to find out, like it really, and this place was kind of, it looked like a freaking gulag, man. It didn't even look like didn't look like a hospital to me. It looked like a
Was it
prison.
a state facility or private?
It was a private facility, but it turns out the people there didn't really know anything about how to treat schizophrenia. It turns out because it was mostly a drug rehab center.
Oh,
It was mostly and like and that's not what it says in the not what it says in the 10, but that's what it was. They were primarily looking for they everyone else there were all people that were drug addicts. Were all drug addicts and they were treating drug addiction. Like so the whole time she was there, they didn't give her anything but like a mild sedative, and it's pretty much it. I think there was like some mild painkillers, mild sedatives. Like she was there for like 2 weeks or I think 1 week the first time. The first one was like 1 week, and she was like there for like 1 week, and like she was able to call me and stuff, and she would call me like every day and stuff like that, and I didn't. They wouldn't tell me like when they were going to release her or anything like that. So I was just like I was trying to find out information this whole time, trying to find out what they were doing, and then when they released her, it was like literally they just like they wouldn't even let me go in the facility. They just like sent her outside, and it was like I was like, so what do I do? Like is she better now? Is like they give her medication? They didn't give her a prescription for anything. They just kind of like they just like held her for like a week and just released her. I was like I didn't even understand what the point of it was. Until this happened so then about a month later, about a month after that, she and I was like I stopped sleeping at this point because like she had a tendency to like go for walks and stuff like that, and I was really worried about that when the state she was in. And sure enough, one of the times I did fall asleep, she had snuck out of the house and like and I kind of woke up and realized she wasn't there and looked around and couldn't find her anywhere, and she didn't have a cell phone on her or anything, and so I went around searching the neighborhood trying to see if like she had walked anywhere, couldn't find her, and I eventually had to call the police as a missing person type thing, and they found her at a hospital. I had already called hospitals, but the hospital had found her eventually. Really, I mean, really kudos to the local cops. I've actually dealt with local cops here in Irving. I live in Irving specifically, but a few times, and they've always been very helpful here. And they're really nice cops here. Like it's not my normal experience with cops. I usually have really bad experience with cops, but they've been really nice here. And they actually came, I guess because my phone wasn't working right or something. They actually came by my house and told me that, oh yeah, hey, your wife, we found her and everything. So we came by to tell you that. And
were
so
they the ones that brought her to the hospital?
No, apparently ambulance did. An ambulance did.
Oh.
What had happened was she had showed up at someone's house, some random person's house, like no idea who it was, and she had knocked on their door and then kind of barged her way into their house and was like, and thought they were people that had kidnapped other people, and had like a meltdown and kind of collapsed in their house, and they had to call these people had no idea who she was or anything. Obviously, it wasn't people that I wish to God I could find those knew who the people were to thank them for like what they did, but they never would tell me who they were, so I couldn't. And she didn't know. Obviously, she didn't remember anything from it. So anyway, so like she ended up in the hospital again. I went there to the hospital, and she didn't even know who I was. She didn't know who I was, or like she said I was a stranger, even though thankfully I have all the identification and everything. So, and the doctors and everything were very understanding. Plus, they knew me from the last time I was there. And anyway, so like they just recommend she go to another facility, and I said like, okay, like, well, actually, it didn't matter what I said at the time because she'd already signed off on going to another facility. She had already signed off on it, so they already had the whole thing ordered and everything. I was like, well, last time they took her to the one of these facilities, they didn't do anything. Like, or is this an actual mental health facility? Is another drug rehab place? And they're like, no, this place is great. It's much nicer than the last one, even though they told me the last one was really nice and everything. Told me all this stuff, and like, I mean, granted, the nurses and stuff at the hospital, they don't know. These are ER doctors. They don't know anything about the way these facilities are. They're not. They only.
So this was a regular house, like a medical hospital that they took
it was just Wadley up the road from me. Yeah, it was just like Wadley or Baylor or something like that. I don't know. I think it was Baylor actually. And yeah, just a regular hospital, ER. I took her to the ER before, and then I took her to the ER this time. The ER, and like the both times, they recommended she go to some mental health facility. They called it, but once again, it was a drug rehab facility. That's primarily what they did there. This one was worse than the first one because like they took her like while I was there. I waited with her while they took her, even though she didn't want to speak to me. She kept telling me they kept telling everyone she didn't want me there and everything because she didn't know who I was. And they took her to this place, and she could not remember who I was or my phone number or anything because unless you have unless the patient has the phone number and can call you, you can't talk to them or anything. So like I was like isolated from her for a solid week. I had no idea. I was calling every day, several times a day, trying to get someone to talk to me, tell me what's going on. It was a nightmare. I was so worried about her. And anyway, so but she was there about 2.5 weeks, I guess. Finally got her out, and after going through all this, and like, and not to mention the fact, and this is at this time I had a job, and I had, well, I was on medical leave because I have this long COVID thing. That's another story, and I was on medical leave for my job. I worked for Amazon at the time, and so I had really good insurance with Amazon. They have really good health package there, and in addition to like the insurance and everything, like I was paying money out of pocket. I was paying like money out of pocket to this hospital every day because like they wouldn't tell me anything, but they would call me every day and ask me for money. So I paid them like, I don't know, over $1,200 in the course of those 2.5 weeks she was there. And then, but eventually I got to the point where I didn't have any more money. The insurance was going to cover anymore. So that's basically the reason I kicked her out.
Mm-hmm.
And when I went and picked her up, I thought maybe somebody this time would actually tell me something, like give me some kind of like, what do I do? How do I care for her? You know, what is there medication? Is there anything? Because like I could tell immediately as soon as she walked out that she was no different. Nothing has changed. And they did the exact same thing the other place did. They gave her mild sedatives and just like kept her in a room and didn't actually do anything to treat this condition. Not one doctor from the 2 hospital visits or these 2 mental health facilities did anything, attempted to give her any medication that actually treated schizophrenia. It's unbelievable.
You know if she saw a psychiatrist at all, or if there was a psychiatrist on staff?
I mean, I would hope so, but they wouldn't tell me anything. They wouldn't give me or anybody else that tried. Her mother also tried to talk to them and stuff like that. Like they wouldn't tell anybody anything. She's an adult. If she was a child, if she's a minor. But
still, like it's very unusual to me to not have involved the family and.
I thought so too.
It's part of the treatment team, like it's part of the aftercare plan.
I thought so too. I mean, I'm hoping, and I hope, I really do, that this is my experience is isolated, that it's not something. Maybe it's just like the way it works here in Texas or something. It could be Texas law stuff that's different from it is in other places in the country. I hope that's the case because like if this is the way it is everywhere for most people, I would think it's horrifying. I'm just telling you, like, this is entirely my experience, and like I think it's extremely weird that they wouldn't. But that's what I mean. Like seriously, the whole time she was there, I actually went. I went up to the facility more than once to try to talk to somebody, and like they wouldn't. And finally, after I went there like the 4th or 5th time in person, like and was like trying to demand to talk to somebody, they finally put me on an intercom system with a nurse, and it was just a nurse. They wouldn't let me talk to the doctors, which I know she talked to doctors while she was there. The doctors wouldn't, and they put her in group therapy and all this stuff like that. I'm like, what does it help if someone's got hearing voices? I don't understand. And the nurse, the only thing the nurse would tell me, she's like, well, the main problem, the only reason we haven't released her yet is because she won't stop crying. I'm like, okay, like she won't stop crying because she doesn't know why she's there. She doesn't understand what's going on. She's confused. And like, no, they wouldn't let me speak to her. I finally did get to speak to her like later that day. They finally got that nurse, like took my phone number down and like put it in front of her, and she called the number. And then she sort of started remembering who I was a little bit there on the phone. And she told me a little, and I got her to tell me a little bit what's going on. But like she said, she spoke to doctors, and I assume a psychiatrist would be one of the things. But once again, this is a drug rehab facility, not a. And they tested her for drugs numerous times. They tested her even after she was there. So they drug tested her, or in her anyway. She doesn't remember that well anymore. But they did a drug test her like every day, and I'm just like what are they? Nobody get in and out of there. Like what do they think is going to happen? I think she's going to test for drugs, positive for drugs, like after the fact. I don't understand that either. It's like they tested her for drugs in the hospital both times and stuff like that, and she was negative on because we don't do drugs. And so, yeah, it was really bizarre. And so after that experience, like, you know, I started looking for other doctors and stuff with that, but I was also running up to the end of my ability to, like I said, my own health issues were affecting like and it's a long story about how I ended up like losing my job at Amazon, but it wasn't entirely the medical thing. It was like there was a lot of like bureaucracy stuff that happened there. That's not really worth going into. But anyway, I ended up losing my job with Amazon partially because of the long COVID thing and other things. And so I didn't have the insurance anymore. And we were just living on. I had a lot of things I was able to sell and stuff to keep us like afloat for here and there. But I kept looking for facilities or doctors or anything to help. I had been directed to a couple of different places that so that they would help with low income families, things like that. But like I never could seem to get them to actually give me an appointment or anything like that. It was a long story, and we just about gave up. I mean, I really did. I just about gave up on. She wasn't Lindsay anymore. She wasn't the woman I knew anymore. It was heartbreaking because like we have like so we have a daughter and I had my daughter staying with my parents because I didn't want her to. I didn't need. It was too much for her to handle. It's like she didn't know. She didn't understand what the deal was because like my wife would tell her like things that my wife tried to tell her once that like that all of her friends that my daughter's theater, like all of her friends at theater were all actors. Like they were all actors. Like they weren't actually real people. They were actually like people that were plants from things like told her daughter like that everyone around her were fake, things like that. Like she told me at one point that my daughter wasn't her. She'd been replaced by it. She'd been swapped with a clone. Like things like that. It was just like it wasn't. I didn't think it was safe for her to be around even her own daughter, and I don't know. It was the most like it was the most disheartening and I don't know a traumatizing experience I've ever had. I mean, I literally do have a I mean, I haven't been diagnosed, but I feel like I have some degree of PTSD from the whole thing. So I have like nightmares about it. I wake up in the middle of the night. I mean, I wake up in cold sweats sometimes, like from like just like I have dreams where like going back to those days and stuff like that. I mean, I couldn't sleep. I couldn't. I had to start sleeping downstairs in the living room on the couch because if I slept upstairs in our bed, sometimes I'd wake up and she wouldn't be in the bed anymore, and like and she'd get up and she'd go outside and stuff like that. So I'd start sleeping downstairs so I could like police the front door to make sure she'd try to like slip out. Like I mean, it was just like this like year of like hell, and I kept trying to find like some help, but of course once you don't have you don't have money, you don't have an insurance, and you don't have those things, then like finding places to I think it was actually through 211, which I'd contacted before and they'd give me other numbers, but like through 211, they actually directed me to a place that I had not heard of before, that hadn't come up in any of my things. I don't think it had actually been open that long, but there was a
211 is the non-emergency number.
Yeah, the non-emergency number. Like they just they direct you to like support type things, and they directed me to this place called Southern Area Behavioral Health, and I in that place, unlike all the other places that all need like I think the only other place I talked to like would told me they could get an appointment in 6 months, and I think I made that appointment at the time because I was like I was like, well, I guess it's better than nothing. And but the Southern Area Behavioral Health place is state funded as far as I know, and they are state and charity funded. I guess they're also funded by some local charity stuff, and you can walk in there. It's kind of in a low rent kind of neighborhood and low rent kind of thing. It looked like it's not the nicest looking facility, but we went up there and got the paperwork filled out and got her in to see somebody that day, and went in and talked to the psychiatrist and told her and they let me go in with her to help explain everything that was going on, because she wasn't all there to like explain it. Like I got her, she could explain a little bit the voices, because the voices gotten to the point where she at least started to recognize that they definitely weren't her. It definitely wasn't. She understood they weren't real, but it was hard for her to ignore them because they were so loud, and like she couldn't sleep. She didn't sleep anymore barely, because like it was just like this loud, constant like chanting of like negative things at her. It's like they telling her to kill herself and all this stuff, and this negative stuff. And she was in pain. I was on the verge of tears all the time, just like I was just in like this like constant state of depression, and this place, like they talked to her and got her. They put her on a medication, olanzapine, which isn't. I come to find out, isn't even that. It's not an uncommon drug for schizophrenia. It's the kind of thing. One of the first lines of defense. We went and got her prescription picked up from the local Walmart, and she took it when we got home, and she went to sleep. It's like within minutes, like she felt, well, I don't know, within an hour or so, it started working enough on her that she was able to sleep. She went to sleep the next morning, woke up, my wife was back. for like 2 years.
Just like that?
It was like that. It was the most unreal thing. And the thing is, like, what frustrates me so much is that all these other doctors, all these other people we talked to, and no one even tried until like we went to a place that had no profit motivation, that made no money off of it, that even gave us a voucher to get the medication for free. It's just like, I mean, like, so what was the point of all those other facilities? Like, what do they do? Do they do this to? I mean, because like I'm a researcher. Like whenever I something I don't know about like that, I never knew I needed to research schizophrenia before that. But once I knew about this, I poured through everything I could find online about everything I could about it, and it's just like a lot of these things are. I'm sorry, what am I trying to say here? I lost my train of thought. I research all this stuff and about the way it works, about like the voices and all this stuff like that, and I understand that like there is definitely connections between drug abuse and schizophrenia that definitely happens in some cases. I wonder if that was what's going on with our other friend maybe. It wasn't what was going on with my wife though, and so like I know that there's like I can't even imagine like what is it. What is that? There are two different facilities, and like these other hospital visits. There's a couple. I went two other doctors visits too. Like I took two other doctors that meantime too. It just didn't amount to anything, so I didn't bother mentioning it. But like other doctors before insurance ran out, we went to other doctors trying to get something, and I didn't even see. It seemed like most people wouldn't even take her seriously. Like I don't think a lot of places even seem to take it seriously as a condition. They didn't seem to understand, or like I mean, like they seemed to understand something was wrong, but like I was like, she's been diagnosed twice with schizophrenia, like from different doctors that both said like, yeah, she's got schizoaffective disorder, and yet. And like the rehab facilities, I don't know if they agree. Maybe they didn't disagree. Maybe they disagree with the diagnosis. I don't know. They wouldn't tell me. But it like I said, my mind had been made up for a while before that, just because of other stuff I'd seen. Like I've always felt like there was something really wrong about the fact that unless someone had an emergency with sickness, that like they couldn't. There wasn't anything they could do for the most part. Like there are clinics and facilities, but like in my particular case, I got this long COVID crap, and like I had prior to losing my insurance, I was going to all these facilities and stuff too. I was going to all these doctors and stuff too, trying to cure, because I have this vertigo that I got from like either the vaccine or long COVID or something, and it was debilitating. It is still debilitating for me. And I went to all these doctors and everything else when they had this expensive insurance and all this stuff like that. I mean, like, and I was paying out all this money, and they would never do anything besides like tell me to go to physical therapy. And they went to physical therapy, and they didn't do anything besides like do this weird maneuver thing where they lay you down real fast and they have to stare at a mirror with numbers on it and like move my eyes around, and didn't do anything but maybe occasionally trigger my vertigo worse. And it never helped. It never helped at all. And I'm like, my experiences with like the for-profit medical system, and other people out there might have completely different experiences, and they might find the exact opposite to be true, and I think that's fine. I mean, I just like, but my own experience, like what I've seen, I just think it's incredible that for 2 years, like I was fighting for any scrap of like help I could for my wife to have any kind of sense of herself back, and like went to facilities that supposedly were specifically for this, that there should be doctors there, should be psychiatrists that would be there. I mean, if they're doing group therapy or something, there should be a psychiatrist doing that, I would assume. Which she told me they did that every day, and but they didn't even bother trying to medicate. They didn't give her a single medication. They did give her prescriptions that last time, but they were, I can't remember what they were called, but anyway, none of them, when I've looked them up, none of them had anything to do with schizophrenia. They were just like, it was a sedative and listen to that. And I think it was a sedative and an anxiety drug. And like, no one bothered trying to treat what they all agreed that her symptoms were. Her symptoms, and she was diagnosed with this thing, but they wouldn't treat it. And I'm just like, maybe it's just like a unique case for us. Maybe it's not common for everyone to be like that, but it's just like, it really like sent me down like I don't know, it sent me down like a really crazy spiral of disbelief about like the whole system. Like I'm just like, what's the point of all these facilities? What's the point of all these people? Like whatever. And I understand that schizophrenia isn't really well understood, and I know that that's a part of it. I think a lot of doctors maybe might be afraid of treating it, or might be afraid of like treating incorrectly or something. Because like it seems like there's some doctors aren't even sure it's real. and stuff like that, and like, which I think is bizarre. Like, I don't. There's no way that it couldn't be
Well, I
real.
know there's a difference between schizoaffective and schizophrenia, but I don't know that it's one that
Schizoaffective,
makes a difference in her case. And I've worked inpatient
right? Yeah,
with some really good doctors. So I've seen people come in with schizophrenia and get treated. I know that there are people out there that know what it is and treat it. So I'm not sure what happened
yeah.
in
I
your
mean,
particular case, but
yeah, it might be we just had a really bad case. Like, I now schizoaffective disorder, from my understand, like the definition of it is really it's schizophrenia plus bipolar. So
well, what, did she get her records at all from the two private hospitals?
I mean, I don't think I have a copy of them. I could get a copy of them, but like, I did have a copy of one of the hospitals at one point. So I for the Center Health Center needed them at one point, but I don't have them on me. But yeah, I've gotten them before. But
Because
they
that
just
might shed some light too if she.
that's those are the people, like, they brought in a psychiatrist there that diagnosed her both times because she was talking so crazy and everything. She was saying things that didn't make sense. So they brought in people to diagnose her there at the facility, in the hospital both times, and that before they sent her to the mental health clinic that wasn't really a mental health clinic. That part really frustrates the hell out of me. It's just like, are there no mental health facilities anymore? Like, do those not, maybe not in Texas or something? Do they not exist? Or are they just drug rehab facilities? Because like, that's
I don't know. I know the trend for a while was to like close as many as they could and bump it to outpatient and what they call community mental health to cut down on the amount of residential facilities that they need.
hmm.
And
It
even
took
here in Washington State, they closed. So I think there's like two, maybe three that are still open, and it's for the really severe, extreme conditions because they want it to be handled on an outpatient and then a community level, which is family, friends, the community.
mhm. I mean, so you yourself, you said you work in mental health too. So you work in you said an inpatient facility.
I did at one time. It was
Yep,
an
yep.
adolescent inpatient unit,
Adolescent. Of course, I mean, it would have been different if she was an adolescent too. That would have been a lot actually easier. It seems like, because like they would have actually talked to me and
but it
stuff like
was
that.
through a hospital. So it was like there was a wing. Well, it was a separate campus actually, but it was part of a larger. It was a children's hospital, so it was part of
Okay,
a larger hospital, and they had a psychiatric department or behavioral health they called it, with an inpatient unit for psychiatric conditions.
right. It like, so I don't know. Like, were you? I'm just curious, because I'm trying to learn about this too. I mean, like, I'll fully admit that, like, my experience, like my opinions are based in largely anecdotal stuff, like, well, just personal experience stuff, and I don't claim to be an expert on this for the entire world. I just, like, in my experience, it's just shown me that I just feel like, in, at least in my gut, I just don't feel like I've seen any situation where I felt like, or even the doctors that have helped me in the past, or versus doctors that haven't helped me any, or that I felt like got the blow off from. I feel like the doctors that really helped me weren't never seemed like they were doing it for money. What I mean? Like, it seemed like they were doing it because they really care about helping people. They were never like the rich doctors. They were never like anytime I ever went to like one of these really nice, really upscale kind of places, those were always the times I never got help by anybody. They would kind of look at you and just be like, I don't know. They just kind of like write you a prescription for something and send you on your way. And anytime I ever went, every time I was really in dire straits or something and ended up going to some clinic or something, like, I usually actually got actual help. And I feel like that's indicative of the fact that I think when it comes to medicine, I think it's something where the people that really want to help people are going to help people no matter what.
Yeah.
I don't see those doctors and those people quitting medicine if suddenly if they didn't have the ability to make, millions of dollars as a doctor, because they weren't making that anyway. Like, these people aren't like that. I'm not, there's certainly there are edge cases. There are definitely like hyper talented surgeons and people like that really wouldn't do it if they couldn't make a lot of money doing it. I'm sure there's people like that, but I just think that the whole argument against socialized healthcare, or at least abolishing the current insurance like scheme that's going on like that, it tends to be that, like, the reason that America's healthcare is as good as it is because we have, we let our doctors can make a lot of money, and we spend all this money towards research into medication and stuff like that. And at the same time, I don't know if that's really true. Like, I like, for even like the COVID vaccine and everything, which I've had my own issues with, and I just when I took it and has had a horrible experience since then. Like, no, those companies, they didn't do that research for free. You know, they got funding from the government. You know, like they made tons and tons of money off of doing all the research to try and find a vaccine for COVID. That there's, you know, like most of the time, what are these companies? What do they tend to like do? Spend all this like, you know, all this capitalism based research money they have is all usually based on like more like, I don't know, like it seems like vanity drugs and stuff like that. And I don't. It doesn't seem like anybody's out there really pouring their heart and soul into cancer research. You know, like in the same way. I just don't. I don't see. I feel like I really feel like medicine is like this one area of society where people that really want to help people are going to do it no matter what, and the other people that are there are just there for the money, and they don't really care much about whether or not they help people or not. And I'm sure that, and there's always cases that don't fit into those categories. There's, you know, like there's bad doctors that volunteer, and there's, you know, and there's really great doctors that do it for the money and also help people. I'm sure that there's both sides of that. But I mean I'm 42 now. I've been to a lot of doctors. I've had a lot of experience with doctors. Like the times I've been into medical facilities or doctors that have helped me the most. Like it's usually been like whenever I've been at my poorest, and I literally, like, I had a doctor once that really was like one of the kindest people I'd ever met. Like, I mean, I went there. They had like an indemnity kind of thing where like you know, I didn't have insurance, so like they let me pay us like $30 to like see the doctor, and he gave me he prescribed me. I was really struggling with depression at the time, and he put me on an antidepressant that really helped me. And not only that, but he also set me up with like they get all these sample boxes of it stuff, and he knew I couldn't afford it, so he set up a thing where like I could go in like to their little like internal like pharmacy thing, and they'd give me a whole bunch of sample boxes of it like every month. You know, they give me a month's worth of stuff. Like, I mean, like in like none of those cases there's no profit motive for those people. They literally could not make money off me. You know, they get $30 for the office visit. It was like, you know, it was nothing. You know, like that's just, it's barely anything. And like it's really, I just, and like I said, it's just my experience maybe. And maybe other people have had very different experiences. Maybe other people have been to clinics that have not helped them. Whereas like when they had insurance or something, like it was like a whole different story. I don't like it. So I'm perfectly open to the fact that I could be very wrong about this, but it's made me really like cynical, I guess, towards the entire idea of for-profit medicine, certainly, and towards our entire understanding of the first mental health this country, mental health, especially with everything my wife went through. It just seems like I really felt like most of the time that like it didn't seem like anybody really understood what was going on and didn't really care to try to find out. It seemed like they were too scared to try to like treat it because, you know, what if they do it wrong, and like, you know, someone's, you know, nobody wants to get sued, basically. You know, no, everyone's like scared of like getting sued from like treating it the wrong way or something like that. I could be wrong with that, but that's how it felt anyway. I mean, because I have no idea, like, why would you keep someone in a facility for 2.5 weeks? That's specifically, and like, not to mention like the money they were charging me. Like there was like, you know, your insurance only covers this much, so like they had me like, you know, sitting on debit card payments of like, so there were $1,200 I spent out of pocket for 2.5 weeks, because I didn't have any, because like the insurance wasn't covering any, it didn't cover after a certain point. And like, so like what was the point of her being there, like when they didn't do anything besides like just like, why wouldn't a psychiatrist see her and be like, well, she clearly, if she's schizoaffective, then I should give her medication for schizoaffective disorder? But they just chose not to. I mean, I guess I couldn't talk to them or anything. I mean, like I have many times, especially since we actually got her help, tried to figure out if I had some sort of grounds to like try to sue or something on, because I was like, I felt like there was malpractice there, you know, like it was like a malpractice.
That's what I was thinking. Like I would get my records at the very least, and she has the right to do that. She could get her entire chart or sign a request and get everything that she's entitled to receive records wise. Right. And start there and look. But she was also isolated with no one to advocate for her too. And that's what I find about consumer education, having people educated about the mental health system or the health system in general, and the ability to do advocacy on behalf of the loved ones that enter the system are the two things that make the most difference that I've seen like a regular layperson can do to improve their chances at better health care. Because there is the profit motive and there's the humanitarian motive and it's individual. I don't know the ratio of how many people go in from which motive, but it's easy to incentivize the profit motive, especially on an institutional, like the further away you get from the individual level, the institutional levels are going to be more incentivized for profit. Yeah. But there is that humanitarian motive, and I don't know how to incentivize that because to me it's intrinsic. But that's the we need more of that to make the difference, to give people what they're actually expecting from healthcare.
I mean, I feel like if our government actually, and this is one case where I mean I'm not a big government person, but I do feel like that's one thing where the government actually would have a good standing to be pouring that money into doctors and stuff in that way. If we took away that whole like the whole I feel like it's almost antithetical to the Hippocratic Oath and everything. You know, like the whole like do no harm type principle, the just the idea of like what medicine is, and like the fact that like I mean, generally speaking, now I know there's lots of different like arguments about what qualifies as healthcare these days and stuff like that. You know, whether or not the transgender healthcare and stuff like that. People have a lot of arguments about that sort of thing. I'm not concerned about any of that at the moment. I feel like there's for the most part like for like well like healthcare when it's like clearly like an emergency type situation, or but not in like a not like a you broke your leg, you need to go to the ER kind of thing. I've tried to go to the ER a couple times for like my stuff. They won't really do anything for me because like they say I need specialists and stuff like that to like
well, they should be able to refer you.
Yeah, but the referrals they want money up front. Like the specialists for like they try to refer me to like a they try to say like I mean if it's just since like this long there are no treatments for it anyway. It doesn't really matter. They try to refer me more than once to like an ear, nose, and throat person, but and like the only ones that I've spoken to like are like, well, yeah, it's going to be like $300 up front. I mean, like right now, like I don't have $30 or I have two nickels rubbed together most of the time. Like $300 for a first visit. That was just
Does Texas have the expanded Medicaid?
I don't believe so. No, I don't believe we have it now. Thankfully, my wife kind of she got like the coverage through the Center Health Center, but it kind of like we didn't really mean to, but we ended up we ended up getting her pregnant, and we had a baby like in January, and so her and her baby are covered through Medicaid for like next 2 years.
Oh, this year.
Yeah, yeah.
Oh,
we have a 3-month-old named Juniper, and she's amazing, and like it's one of those things where we were it was like we were reunited for 2 years, and we weren't careful, so I mean seriously that was like because like it was like she didn't feel like she had whenever she woke up that next morning and I saw her eyes and like her eyes looked like her eyes again. It was unreal. I mean,
did she have much memory of what happened? Like, could she articulate the experience from her perspective?
A little bit, but not much. I mean, she doesn't remember that much of it. She remembers. She has flashes of memory from it, but it was like she felt like she literally felt like she woke up from a coma. Is that she said? It felt like she was in some sort of weird like dream for 2 years, and like it's very like dream memory, like like you can remember things, but it's not very it's not very clear. It seems it's hazy and like it's all jumbled together and everything. And so I mean she remembers a little bit about being in those facilities, but she doesn't. I mean, she was able to articulate to me when she did come out. The few things she didn't remember was that she didn't think I was really me. That's the reason she was telling me she was trying to leave me. Was that she didn't think I was actually me. She thought I'd been replaced by a duplicate person, like a clone or something like that. She thought I was replaced by. They replaced me because it's just like all this really bizarre stuff that like that happens to people. Like I had no idea about schizophrenia and how insidious it is, and just how absolutely horrifying of a disease. I mean, like it was, at least for me alone. I mean, I can't even imagine what it was like for her. I have no idea how to even imagine what's like to wake up every day and like basically a nightmare. Because she was like living a nightmare every day. She thought everyone around her was trying to either kill her or was lying to her about who she was or who they were. I mean, and for me, it was. I mean, I was like, was having this other. It's like this disease that like convinces you of just like it just puts you. I mean, you're in a living nightmare all the time, and I had no idea. Like I thought schizophrenics were just people that just like I thought they just thought the government was out to get them, and kind of, and you see it's always portrayed in such a quirky, funny kind of way. It's always portrayed to be funny, and like it's just, man, it's like it's kind of horror. I mean, I'm someone I come from like I've been a screenwriter before. I've written a couple of movie scripts stuff, and nothing was really produced. And nothing that anyone would know. But you know, I'm a huge movie person though. I've always been like, you know, I've been a huge pop culture buff of all sorts. And I mean it, you know, I've never been the kind of person to think that, you know, like, you know, that to get mad at movies for doing things irresponsibly or something like that, you know, the things like, but man, like after like going through that, I'm like, yeah, it's extremely irresponsible. Like, I mean, maybe not so much that like every single movie needs to portray it in the most realistic, gritty way possible, but I've never seen it portrayed in any way that wasn't like as this quirky, funny thing, you know, oh, isn't that goofy? They're schizophrenic, you know, kind of thing. Like you never see it as like as like, I mean, it's either that or it's the exact opposite. It's the exact other extreme where they're literal murderers. You know, they're trying to and like her whole time she thought people were trying to kill her, but she and had voices trying to tell her to kill herself, but she never had the impulse to hurt anybody. She was never she broke a picture once, and that was it. You know, I mean, it wasn't like, you know, she wasn't a violent or any danger to anyone but herself. But you know, it's just insane to me, like how little I think that we. I mean, everyone I've talked to since this happened, I've told, you know, the story of like, and it hasn't been a lot of people, but I mean, I don't know, I've been 20 or 30 maybe people. I've been really isolated since all the stuff happened. Like while it was happening, I didn't really speak to people outside of just like my immediate family and stuff like that. And like, it just like, I didn't know how to explain it to anyone. And so I haven't really been as social of a person. I'm trying to reemerge from this right now, actually.
Oh.
As part of the reason I started talking to people on Discord and stuff like that. I'm trying to like be a person again. You know, I'm not trying to be as such a cave troll. And
I think that's a healthy thing to do.
Yeah, I hope so. But yeah, I everyone I talk to though, like I haven't talked to a single person so far that has seemed to have that, to seem to understand what schizophrenia is either. Like I told them the story of what happened, they're like, you know, nobody sees it. They're like, I had no idea it was like that, you know, and how convinced that someone could be by their own inner demon type voices. Like whenever if you don't recognize it, because I can only imagine, like if my inner voice, you know, because I have the same issues like most people. I have negative self-talk and stuff that goes on. Like if I didn't understand that was me thinking those things, yeah, I can't even imagine like the horror that would bring on you. You felt like you had, because she felt like she heard it physically, you know, like in her ears, not just in her head. It felt like there were people speaking to her, like voices, and like in her, you know, she thought that they sound like celebrities to her. They'd sound like, you know, family members, celebrities, all these things like that would be speaking to her. And she, especially if there's any white noise around, where white noise was apparently really triggering for her.
Oh,
like,
yeah.
like fan noise or like air conditioning type stuff, that would make it even worse. Like she would just like hear all this, like, you know, and it was always like, you know, she was a little afraid. I mean, I remember whenever she was first about to take the medication, she was a little worried. She said, like, you know, she was really worried about like, what if the voices really did go away, because she'd gotten so used to them. I mean, she was really happy when they were gone the next day. But I mean, they didn't
Is
go
she
away.
okay now? Like, all she has to do
now.
is keep up with the medication.
Yeah,
she's fine.
as long as she takes her olanzapine, she takes it twice a day, and we haven't. And she's also, thank God, she's not one of those people that's super afraid of medication. Or never had any issues with medication before. You know, like I think if she was one of those people that was kind of like had a hesitation towards taking meds, those are the people I really worry about the most with it, because I know that's typically what happened. Because a lot of people have like this thing where they think that medication isn't really good to take. You know, that's
or
bad
they
to
stop
be on
taking them, or the symptoms become too much to want to continue.
She's really, I mean, she hasn't really had any really negative side effects. I mean, the benefits far outweigh any of the side effects she's had, and so she's actually quite happy taking it. She has never once fought me about taking it at all. I mean, she takes it herself. I don't even have to police her on it. So I ask her every now and then if she gets a little spacey, like I'll be like, did you take your meds? You know, she's like, if she forgot that she takes them, you know, it's not really a big deal. But I mean, which is like, I mean, we're so lucky in that sense. Like even though we fought through 2 years. Oh, yeah, we fought through 2 years to get that point. But at the same time, we're so lucky in the sense that that we were able to find a medication. Like it took, I mean, it was about, you know, it was like 6 months overall to actually get adjusted perfectly, where it was like we had the exact when she really got rid of the voices altogether. And like, because they would still be there a little bit in the background, she just wouldn't hear them as loudly and stuff for a little while, but still, like it brought her back to sanity anyway. And so I mean, like there was periods there where like it took some fluctuations, but still the place we went to, like they helped through all of it. Like they always picked up the phone. We never had to worry about it. And so that was great. I mean, we're really lucky in that sense. 'Cause I know I've read so many horror stories of people that actually do get on medication, but they don't put them on the right one right away, and like, it takes forever to get adjusted. And like some people just don't take to it, and some people get stop taking their meds because they get paranoid and stuff like that. So we are really lucky in that sense. And I mean, I'm so thankful every day that we found the place we did, and we got her on the medication so quickly, so got her on a medication that helped her so quickly. Because I mean, I had zero confidence it was going to do anything. Whenever I left that place, I was like, it was like I just felt like it was another shot. The worst that could happen is nothing happens. Because like, it didn't. I didn't really think anything was going to change. I didn't expect her to wake up and just be there the next day. It was like that was the biggest surprise of my life. I think I had so resigned myself to just like just trying to be, which I mean, it was not like the worst fate in the world or anything. I'm not trying to make something like that, but I just resigned myself to being her caretaker from that point forward. It just wasn't gonna, we weren't gonna ever have a relationship again because she didn't understand who I was. It was like almost like it's like looking at someone's dementia or Alzheimer's. It was like that kind of thing. And I had a grandparent that had Alzheimer's, so I mean, I know what that's like. As well. And like, I mean, that's how she would look, whenever she was really in the depths of like psychosis. It was like that same look that someone with Alzheimer's dementia has like. And I don't know. I mean, I don't even know what my point of all this is anymore. I guess I'm just telling the story at this point, but it's just, it's been a real hellish ride of going through all this. And I don't know. I mean, maybe there are solutions out there that could be talked about. Maybe there are things.
Well, one thing she could do for the future is do a medical power of attorney that gives you more access and ability to advocate for her.
We actually did that, and that's actually something. Yeah, that is a good note. No, we actually did that. They helped us with that at the Southern Behavioral Health Center. They connected us with the social worker. A social worker that actually helped us for a while. Like we had for a little while, had rental assistance and stuff like that. I was trying to find some kind of like way to get us back on our feet, but I don't know where we're going at this point. We have to move to this place, but yeah, I might try to go back to. My parents don't really have a place for us, but like we might try to move back in with my parents or something for a little while. I don't know what we're going to do, but we had rental assistance for a while and stuff like that. Like we were on food stamps, and then they took our away our food stamps or something. That's a whole other situation. But yeah, I mean, we've been on we've been on this assistance type stuff for the last few months. I've been trying to figure out a way to, support ourselves, but I can't really do many regular jobs because of the vertigo. I literally fall over constantly. So it's fine. I'm sitting here like this. I can do that, but even I'm dizzy right now. You can't really tell. That's the reason I keep on looking over the side like that because I'm constantly
Can they do anything for that?
No, unfortunately, it's that they're a mental health facility. That's literally what they do at that place. And I've gone to a few clinics and the problem with the clinics and like that they want to help, but they just don't have the expertise to handle it. Well, first of all, nobody, whether or not it's the vaccine is a side effect of the vaccine or it's long COVID, which both seem very similar. Like it seems like there's a lot of studies that have, when you look it up, if you look up like a COVID vaccine and COVID vaccine vertigo, there's actually been a few studies that have done that. It's actually a noticed thing, but it's not very widely accepted or whatever at this point. Like most doctors don't seem to. Well, the whole time I was trying to get help for it before my insurance ran out. Like I said, like I went to my primary doctor. I went to like 2 different neurologists. I went to and like it was so soon at the thing. I didn't think about it being COVID related or anything at first, the longest time because like I got COVID like right when COVID started. Like at the very far and it had almost no issues with it. It was just like I got it and I went to the doctor and he was like, yeah, it's probably this new the time that literally it was like this new thing that this new thing that was going around and like and he was like we don't really know much about it yet, but just here he gave me like some cold medication and told me to rest and I did that and it just kind of went away after like a week and a half. And then later on I went to the doctor just for random help. That was by the time the vaccine came out, and he was like, "Well, I know you had it before, but I think you should get the vaccine. Like my doctor was kind of weird. He was kind of like a bit of a conspiracy theorist himself. He was always talking about like, he didn't like the government being involved in this and that. So I didn't really have any interest in getting the vaccine because I'd already had it and I thought I had immunity. So, but my doctor was like, and he's the kind of guy he was. I thought, hey, what the heck? It didn't cost me anything. I had insurance, and like, they gave me the shot. They gave me the shot, and I had to go back and get the second one. And after I got that second shot, man, like I was driving home and like I got he also tried me on different medication too. So there was a second medication that I thought maybe this new medication that he tried me on. Because I had the other one, like he'd put as an anxiety thing that didn't help me very much. And so he tried this other medication, like and I'd taken it too, and like it wasn't like driving home from the doctor, but it was like driving later that day. And I got really dizzy and like my eyes like crossed and like I couldn't see straight.
Oh, wow.
And while I was driving too, I had to pull over. And like I thought it was a side effect from this other medication. I was like, well, I'm gonna take that again. And stopped taking it. And then like the vertigo just kept coming back like day after day. And I didn't put anything together about about it being like COVID related or vaccine related for the longest time, because I thought, well, I already had COVID and it didn't really do anything to me. And like, what could the vaccine possibly hurt? How could that possibly hurt me? I don't know, but it never went away. And I went back to the doctor several times, like I can't seem to get rid of this vertigo. I just like I'm dizzy all the time. I can't really drive. Like I literally I had to drive. I was having to take Ubers and Lyfts in places just because I couldn't drive anymore. And he tried me. He put me on like some meclizine or something like that for like dizziness or something like that, and it didn't really do much. But he tried to get me on physical therapy. Like nobody suggested that it was COVID or long COVID or the vaccine things. Like those weren't terms that even existed at the time. Yeah, nobody even considered that, or vaccine injury or anything like that. Those weren't terms anybody or even mentioned. And so like it wasn't really until like after I'd already lost the insurance and everything, and it was that those were even things that people were talking about and stuff like that. And so now like you can't really go to anywhere that like seems to have, and the only doctors I have talked to, and I've talked to a couple of clinic type doctors about it, so like that they're just like, we don't know anything about it yet. It's just like we don't understand it. We don't understand what causes it. We don't understand like what it's kind of generally agreed, at least by some people in the medical community, that there is such thing as long COVID, and it has like these various effects and harms to people and stuff like that, but nobody seems to know what to do about it. So,
are there other people with these symptoms that they're aware of?
Yeah, I mean, like there are. I mean, you can actually. I started very recently. I started seeing a bunch of stuff about it on like YouTube, was like that. There's this girl, what's called Physics Girl. Have you heard of her? Mm-hmm. She's kind of a famous YouTuber. She's a YouTuber that used to be real big back in the day. She was like a real sweet young girl that she would just explain physics things, like physics stuff in a really plain language. But she got afflicted with it, I guess, a while back. She disappeared from YouTube, and like I saw a video of whereas a friend of hers made it that also had a channel, and he was talking about like her struggles with long. And I was like, well, watch this thing. I was like, wow, that's the exact same thing, like that's exactly like, and because for a while it made me feel crazy, just since I was like, I kind of figured the doctors and everything would just, and they did. I think a lot of the doctors, they wouldn't say it, but I think a lot of the doctors, when I mentioned that I thought it was related to the vaccine or something, they kind of looked at me as a conspiracy. Now. I'm like, I'm not an anti-vaxxer. I got the vaccine. I'm not anti-vaccine. I got the vaccine. I didn't fight or struggle about that. I'm not. I just started having these issues after I got it. I mean, but they kind of look at me like, oh, sure, yeah, I'm sure it's got to be that. They just, and then they send me off they send me off with weird physical therapy and all the different physical therapy things. I went to 3 different facilities. They all did the same things. I'd always go in. They'd put me on some like cycling machine for like a minute, for like 10 minutes, and then they would they put those little electrode things to your back, and like have you like lay down, like basically take a nap, and then they get up and they do this weird thing where they would like, it's like a chiropractic type thing where they'd turn your head to the side and how do you sit up, and then they would like lay you down real fast. And maybe that helps some people, I guess but it certainly didn't do anything to me. I don't know what it was supposed to do. It always felt dumb. It felt like I was being baptized without water. It was very like, it was very like bizarre, and then of course the worst part of it was that then after that they would send me out to sit in this chair in front of, like, it was like the physical therapy places are like gyms kind of, so like there would be these big mirrors everywhere. He'd go over, he'd write numbers on this mirror, like he'd write 1 2 3 4 5 1 2 3 4 5 across, and then he would be like, just follow the numbers, down the line and then go over here and just like make sure you just move one at a time with your eyes without moving your head. They'd have just do that a bunch of times. And like, okay, how's that gonna? I mean, I did it. I, it didn't affect me at all. It didn't do anything besides occasionally the fact that, I mean, happening all the time. So like, I mean, it could just been happening from anything. But they thought that it maybe had to do with rapid eye movement or something like that that was causing it. But like, that's still not causing the vertigo. I mean, that's what triggering the actual symptoms. So I don't know. It's been really, it's been a real, it's been, we've had a lot of bad medical stuff happen. I guess I didn't say that much. Like, it's a lot of bad medical stuff happened last few years. And like so one on top of the other. It's been a crazy couple of years. Like, but COVID seems to have, like, up into so many lives. And like in my case, I guess it was kind of COVID related. But like, I mean, it isn't, nobody. I thankfully, I mean, well, my grandfather did die from COVID. So I guess I can't really say it like it didn't affect our lives any other way. But man, I guess just like, but he was very, very old too. So it's strange, like the way that like that pandemic has affected so many lives, like not even in the ways that I think people realize. Like, so the stress of that plus what was happening with our friend, I think it's what pushed my wife into the psychosis. Like, like I did say, like, looking back, we kind of see like some signs that like that was there before, that we did not know. We didn't realize it. We just thought, sometimes I don't know. We've all been kind of weird people. So weird people, have weird ideas about things. I've always been kind of like I've always been really big into researching conspiracies and crazy things. So like, whenever people start saying crazy things to you, like, it makes you think all sorts of even weirder things. I will say this whole thing has made me more grounded in that sense. I don't look at the world nearly as much in a conspiracy-ish manner anymore. Once you see somebody that like starts believing all the really crazy stuff, because I realized, like, I never believed it all that seriously. It was always like, it's like kind of a fun thing to me. It doesn't seem fun anymore. I don't know. I'm rambling. I'm a rambler.
Well, is there anything you can do online, maybe?
About what?
Is there anything you can do online for a living where you wouldn't have to drive or leave the house?
Yeah, I mean, I used to work for Amazon online. I did customer service work for them from home, and it was actually very difficult for me to do. But that was largely because like the number, I had to like have 4 screens up, and like I had to be constantly like around stuff. Like I get really dizzy and have to lay down. But I mean, I've tried it. I've looked for online work. I've looked for a lot of different stuff like that, and there just isn't a lot. I mean, there isn't that much. At least nothing that I can find that actually like, that. I mean, yeah, I mean, I look every day, but it's just not a there's not a lot of stuff out there. Like work from home type stuff tends to be either scams or you got to know somebody to get into it.
Oh.
It's just the way the world works right now. My wife is I applied for her for disability pretty much early on because like it's considered it's a covered condition for disability, schizophrenia, schizoaffective disorder. Because like even though she has her medication stuff and she's fine on that, it's not really necessarily if I mean she slipped into psychosis somehow if like the medication or something, if she missed her medication, which I mean she'd have to miss quite a few times, I'm pretty sure. I think it's built up in her system enough where she wouldn't have to, it wouldn't be like a single dose missed, and she'd go right into it. But like that was what the doctors anyway told us. So they give the doctor's opinion at the health plan is like it's not really going to be safe for her to work a job like out, to work a job out in public because like just in case like some kind of really stressful situation come up or something, it could trigger the psychosis. And then like I mean, not that she'd be really more such a danger to herself than anything, and so we were like, okay, so we applied for disability stuff for her. I considered applying for myself too, but like they don't. No one believe at this point that it's not officially recognized. My condition isn't officially recognized by the government or anything as a thing that exists. Like they don't want to admit that the vaccine or whatever doesn't have anything has any harmful side effects. I don't think, but it's okay. I mean, it's really not I didn't really want to go into a bunch of sob story stuff. I feel like I'm forgetting like a major point that I was going to make or something about the healthcare stuff, but I think I made it all. I don't know.
Well, I mean, you've been through a lot, and yes, the healthcare. It's also very top heavy, administrative bloat. I don't think the resources are going to the ground level where they can be used the most, and a lot of it is the people with the competence. There's less of them than the people that need that competence, and if they're incentivized by profit, they're going to go take the cushy jobs. elsewhere where they're harder to access.
Yeah,
So I think that the way the resources distributed too is some of it.
I agree. I mean, I think there's just a lot of things that I see that. I mean, like I said, I actually felt this way before. I mean, as much as I've been against the idea of socialism, I like ever since I remember the first time, like I remember as a kid, like as like a 14-year-old or 15-year-old or something like that. Like I actually like kind of like conceptualizing what basically I found out later was socialism. Like, would it be great if, like, if people could just like do what they were born to do without to worry about money and stuff like that, and like, I didn't realize that was like a system that so sort of existed, but how horrific it really was. Like it's pretty obvious pretty early on, that having the government like provide everything and things like that without anybody having any motivation, it didn't make a lot of sense to me. So like but even before all this happened, like I was just like, you see the problems in like the way that like just the insurance system itself is just so messed up. I mean, just the fact that you can't go to the hospital and know what they're going to charge you for anything. I think they tried to pass this as like a law or something a while back. I want to say there was some law that was proposed that was going to like, it was going to force like hospitals and doctors like put their pricing up front, and like so you knew what you were being charged for what, because so that it would create, because I think that would create in itself just some natural competitiveness in the market. If you're going to go capitalism, I feel like that'd be the best way to do it, because at least that way, like then this hospital couldn't like, if everyone knows that going to this hospital costs you a lot more money, then they're not going to go there. So like it would at least create like some competitiveness in the market, at least that we some positive difference maybe. But like I hate that like that it's just allowed to like be like this, where like the only way you can really get any medical help is if you have insurance, and insurance itself is horribly expensive no matter what. I mean, I've looked into try to find some other insurance plans or something like that, and like it's just not even possible. Like not
even with the marketplace.
Oh yeah, I mean, I don't know what it is about our income. I mean, we don't really have any income right now or anything like that. I really thought I would have qualified for Medicaid, like because of like being caretaker for her and also for my daughter and stuff like that. But apparently not. I got rejected both times. But anyway, yeah, I mean, it seems like there's bound to be like better solutions. Like I don't even understand how we got to this place where our system is so messed up, where I mean, like basically you go to the hospital, if you have insurance, like the insurance is going to negotiate everything down so much, so they settle, they have their pricing set so high so that whenever they negotiate the prices, they come down to a more reasonable level, so still make money. But then if anybody goes in that doesn't have insurance, then they charge them the exorbitant prices. And it's just like, I mean, for which people can't pay, so they don't even get money off that. So I don't even know, like, what's the point? Like, like what are we doing? Like as a country, as a people, like, I mean, like, how does it help anyone? No, I guess the insurance companies make money. It creates the need for the insurance companies. But if we could take that need out of the equation, if we could take the insurance, I really do think that would solve, like, and you still have insurance for like the more vanity type of, like, if people want to get breast implants or plastic surgery, things like that are totally cosmetic type things that don't have anything to do with like your overall health and life, then like that's fine. People get insurance, that sort of thing. They can get insurance to help cover like like you just have an insurance industry. But I just don't think for actual catastrophic medical type stuff, I just don't think we should be having like this system in place at all. It doesn't make sense. It's predatory to a degree that seems almost comical. I mean, if you look at it on paper of like the whole system, like the whole way it's like they jack the prices up here so they can be negotiated down further and all this stuff, and then everybody else doesn't pay this middleman company. They get screwed the most for the most part. It's like that just seems like it seems farcical to me. It really does. I mean, I there's a lot of things that like whenever I really look at them, I really break them down. I find you see how it gets from point A to point B, and I see how it got there. But the fact that we've let it get this far and get as absurd as it is just seems to me just like, I mean, I see how we get there, how it gets from there to there to there, but it's like, but what? At no point does anybody think this might seem a little like? I mean, I understand it's like the frog boiling thing, like it happens so gradually over time. It's not like anyone just implemented the whole thing all at once and it was just like bam, that's like that. But I understand that it's the level of it has risen over time to what it is, but it just seems so freaking messed up, man.
Yeah, I don't know what the solution is. I mean, the political will would have to be there, and apparently,
I know.
it's not. I mean, we got the ACA.
I don't. I don't have any political power, and I never will, and so I know, like, I think the most thing, thing I'm hoping that most people might will take away from it is, any of the thing Wayne says is, like, I really hope people become more aware of just, I guess, of schizophrenia, I guess, in that sense, of just like the fact that, like, because I see in the news a lot recently. I just one thing I did forget to say that I wanted to mention. I have seen this in, like, in a lot of news articles, stuff like that, of people that have had people that are clearly, that, to me, as far as I can tell, like, they see this, for everything I've learned, it seems like they have the telltale signs of being schizophrenic, that, like, like, do this act, and people commit crimes or something like that, even some of the mass shooters and stuff like that. And but more often not really the mass shooters as much as, like, people that, like, you see, like, Florida Man type stories, stuff like just weird, bizarre stuff, and you see, like, the stuff these people say and do, and, like, and they get mocked in the media. They really do. Like, they get like, isn't it wacky this person does this or that? I wish I should have pulled up some examples, because I've seen a lot of them, but and I just think, like, and every time I see that, it kind of breaks my heart a little bit. It's like these people don't need to be mocked. They're sick. These people are actually sick. They're not. And, like, and I realized, like, I would have been some of the same people that mocked them before too, and I hate that. I really hate that's true about even myself. Like, I that you don't know about this sort of thing. You don't realize how horrific mental illness really can be, and it doesn't. It's just, like, one of the most horrifying statistics I read is that, like, a lot of the, there's, it's kind of famously that, a lot of homeless people are schizophrenic, and, like, the reason why that is because their families abandon them, because they don't know how to deal with it.
They don't know what to do with it. Yeah.
They don't know. They don't even understand what happened to them. They don't understand these people are schizophrenic, and they, so, like, and no one helps them. No one actually, like, if they had similar experiences like the one I had. I mean, I never would have abandoned my wife, no matter what. But at the same time, I easily could have gotten where I woke up one day and she could have been gone, and I wouldn't be able to find her if she hadn't, like, gone to that person's house, if she just wandered down, like, and found herself amongst, transients under a bridge somewhere or something like that, and started living like that. I mean, unless I ran across her, like, accidentally, I never would have found her. I never would have known what happened to her. It's just, like, it blows me away how horrific those things can go so quickly. And like, so I see these people out there that are, like, the people that are homeless, people that, even if they're not homeless, like, people that they clearly have this issue like that, and people, like, just, we blow them off and everything. And, like, and I feel like, people wouldn't, if people understood what was happening to them, I don't think the people would abandon them so easily. I don't think if there was better system in place to help them, I don't feel like it would be like that. I feel like that we just don't have any real infrastructure for mental health. I don't feel like there's really any real, like, and there's individual people, but as a system, like, we just don't have any, like, real understanding of it. It's just bizarre, like, how, and I think it's a lot more common than it's common enough that two people in my life, one person who I guess had been diagnosed a long time ago, I didn't understand that, and so after the fact, all this other stuff happened. I realized, like, after, like, I kicked her out on all the other stuff, and she's okay now. I've gotten in touch with her and found out she's okay now. She found help back with her family back in Nevada, where she went back to, and so, like, it turned out okay. But I still felt horrible about that, because, like, I didn't know. I thought she was just being a crazy, manipulative, horrible, abusive person. I mean, because her behavior was abusive and manipulative and terrible. So I had no idea like that, like, and I didn't tell. It wasn't until, like, after everything that happened to Lindsay that I thought back, and I was like, that's, she told me once that she had been diagnosed with paranoid schizophrenic, and I was just like, it made me, like, I felt awful. Just I couldn't believe that, like, I never once tried to get her to, not, granted, she was of the type that she would have gone to get help no matter what. That's part of what she had told me at the time. She was like, because she's like, they told me I was paranoid schizophrenic, but fuck that shit, kind of thing. And she was like, I'm not taking their meds and stuff like that. And I thought she was joking around, but apparently she wasn't. But like, if it's common enough that it could happen to, I mean, Brendan, I could be an edge case. I probably am an edge case, that sort of thing. I don't think that's common for a lot of people, but I see it in a lot of people. I see a lot of stories and stuff out there, and it just seems like no one really has any empathy for it. No one has any sympathy or empathy towards
They don't know what to do. They don't know what to do with it. It's very hard to relate to. They don't know what to do with things like autism and
Yeah.
intellectual disabilities either.
Well, autism is a real tough one because there isn't any. But I mean, like at least with schizophrenia, like there is medication that does help at least, and it seems like, and there's more medications. Like I found out that there's more that have come out even in recent times. There's one new one that it's an injection based thing that they can only do is only once every 6 months, stuff like that. So there's a lot of more medications out there than there used to be for it. I just, of course, a lot of it's very expensive and it requires a lot of money and stuff to even, I think, even to get those kind of meds, like, like but like the meds like my wife is on. I mean, I've wondered, with some people, I mean, and I'm not someone who doesn't, I don't want to say this, like people think, I don't think that these people exist, but there's been a couple of people I've met in my lifetime that have been trans, that at least one of them that it seemed like it was like, it wasn't really, they weren't really just trans, seemed like they had something else going on. I've wondered, like, I mean, do people even try to try people on like any of these kind of drugs that like olanzapine and stuff like that? I mean, like, people even try them on this thing? I mean, like,
well, not now. They don't.
Yeah, I mean, because I just, there's people legitimately trans. I've been friends with many of them. I've been friends with many people that were legitimately trans, and I don't think, but there's been a couple of people I've met though that. I've done a lot of stuff in the arts and stuff like that. I've been in bands and stuff like that. You meet a lot of, like, people on the edges of society and stuff like that. And like, a couple of people that it definitely didn't seem like they had gender dysphoria as much as they had like a mental dysphoria in another sense.
Well, that's why they're supposed to do exploratory therapy, which now is being stigmatized as conversion therapy.
So it's so stupid. Yeah, I think
there's an agenda to rush them through into the trans box as quickly as they can.
Absolutely, because like it doesn't make any sense really when you think about it. It's like we all agree that gender dysphoria is a thing, and that the whole idea that transitioning is the not the cure, but the way of helping to help that down. But then, like, if you try to mention, like, trying to cure gender dysphoria, like really cure it, if they could come up with a pill that would get rid of just gender dysphoria, then people freak out. There's a YouTuber, Short Photo Taco. I think he goes by Dev. He did a video where he mentioned that on he mentioned that on Twitter. He said, like, he couldn't wait for the day that they finally have a medication that will cure gender dysphoria, and people like just lost their freaking shit about it, man. They were just like, you're trying to erase trans people and stuff like. But isn't it that if you have a sickness, if you have a mental illness, don't you want to fix it? Like, wouldn't it be easier? Wouldn't it be easier if you didn't feel uncomfortable in your body? Well,
they used to say that about autism and homosexuality too. Like,
I guess that's true. I mean, like,
nobody wants to be cured, but if it's legitimate, if the dysphoria is legitimately from mental illness and not from actual dysphoria.
Well, yeah, that's what.
But now it's a political identity too.
That's true. Yeah, that's true. I've never thought that gay people were mentally ill, though. I don't know. I guess I've never heard that really mentioned or said.
Well, at one point in history, we were.
Yeah, that's true. I mean, yeah, that's true. They were at one point. I mean, it makes a lot less sense. That makes a lot less sense to me to think that than it does like with someone who believes they're in the wrong body. I just feel like that seems a lot more like closer to something that seems. It just seems like if you feel like you're in the wrong body, it seems like something you wouldn't want to feel that way anymore, Especially if the cure is like surgery that's like life.
Yeah, but even surgery doesn't give you the other body that you.
It doesn't.
It approximates it, but it's still your body.
I've told people. I told people many times. It was that I had. I didn't really know how to feel about a lot of stuff for a long time, and I mean, in terms of like all the debates around stuff, there's this show called The Orville, like has like a really interesting kind of take on the trans thing, with like this kid that's like transitioned genders at birth because like their planet they don't have females, they only have males. So if they have a female born, they automatically transition to male, and like the kid didn't know about it and all this stuff. And the thing is funny about it in the show, and like it kind of uses it as this really like as a philosophical kind of concept and to explore these issues. And it's really interesting. But the thing about it is that for them in this world, like to change the gender is like it's like a 10-minute procedure that just has no like side effects or anything. It's just like instantaneous. And I was like, if that was the case, if our medicals if medicine is advanced to the degree where like people could just like go into a doctor and like 10 minutes later come out with as a different gender fully transition, like I don't think myself or anybody would have any issue with any of the things about the transing the kids stuff and all that stuff. Like, I mean, like that's the thing. The only thing I have an issue with is like the stuff towards the kids thing. And like, I mean, But if it was like a 10-minute procedure that had no long lasting side effects, I think we'd all be fine with it. It's not, nobody really has an issue with that. We have an issue with the fact that it's not really, you're not really changing it. You're cosmetically doing some stuff, but you're really changing the sex of anybody. It's not the same thing. I just think that's the, I think people seem to think that it's so like, it's so fraught. But it's like we're only concerned about the fact that it's not something you can reverse. Weirdly enough, the fact you can do it the first place, you can't really reverse it, and it's pretty horrific. It's a pretty horrific procedure, that hurts a lot of people. I mean, not that I mean, just the bottom surgery, obviously, but yeah, I don't. I think a lot. I don't know. It's a really interesting idea when you realize that, like that. I guess I never thought of it before. Like if it was simple, if it was easy, and it had no side effects, somebody have an issue with it. It wouldn't be like a big deal. I think that maybe some people would. Maybe some people would be like, "Oh, it's still not the same. You were born that way." I guess that's kind of biggest well this, but like I think most of the problem, most people I know of that have any issues with any of that stuff is mostly just the fact that you're really concerned about the people, like their well being overall. It doesn't seem like it really helps that much. I don't know. I'm
it's the
rambling.
reality denialism and the gaslighting. Like, I don't care if they transition, but if I can tell that you're a trans person and not the gender, don't make me pretend that. Don't make me deny my own eyeballs.
Yeah, I mean, I'll respect people, like, I'm not, because it doesn't make any sense too to like in a workplace situation. Like I was I used to work before I worked at home for Amazon. I worked in the warehouses and stuff, and I did some supervisory stuff for them at different points in the warehouses. And like I had people that were on our team that were trans or something like that. Like, if they're presenting as female, they're male presenting as female, they at least they made the effort. Like, what am I gonna do? I'm not gonna go out of my way to like call them male, to call them he or him. It doesn't make any sense. Like, you just go with whatever's presented to you in front of you. It's just like it makes less sense to do that than now. However, if there's a guy just going around that didn't present themselves as a female at all, but they said like they were a her, or something like that, then that would be a lot more difficult to like, and I would probably have to, in that situation, probably have to tell somebody like, look, I'll try to respect your thing as much as I can, but I'm probably going to get it wrong. Because like, if you look a certain way, it's just like your brain.
It's their job to pass. If you want to transition, it's your job to do it successfully.
I don't get the whole identity thing, period, though. I mean, the whole the weird identity stuff that's happens in society is bizarre to me in general, because like people feel such a need to identify with a group in a way that, like, I mean, like I said, I told you before, like I'm hyper individualist anyway, so that's probably partly a me thing. But I just don't understand. It doesn't make sense to me. Like, I don't think of myself. Okay, I am a straight white male. I was like the least desirable of all. of all types of people at this point in history. But and people would probably say the reason I don't think about it like this is because the world is catered to me. But I mean, still, nonetheless, I don't think I've looked at any situation my entire life. I don't think I've ever like thought about anything in my life where I thought about like, well, as a white male, how would I, I just don't think about things like that, like, and I don't, I've been friends with tons of people that are gay, trans, all that sort of stuff. And all of them I was friends with, they didn't go around identifying themselves like that. Like, one of my best friends at Amazon was like a lesbian girl I worked with, and I didn't know she was a lesbian for the longest time, because until one day, like we'd known for months, like she mentioned to her and her girlfriend, like that was, and I didn't make any note of it then, and I didn't think of it till like later, she never like identifies herself as, she didn't feel the need to like make sure I knew that she was gay or at any point like that. It didn't matter. Like, we were coworkers, we were friends. It's just like why is it so important that people feel the need to announce?
It's political now.
Yeah, I know it is.
It's tribalism.
It still doesn't make sense to me, though. I know, because tribalism doesn't make sense to me. That's why. Because like I get so hung up on like this. Like, why do you want to be part of like if I identify as anything, I identify as myself. I identify as Chris. Identify.
Yes.
Yeah.
And I see other people that way.
Yeah. Right. It's just like.
But I don't know. I guess individualists are more rare than I realize, because that's completely normal to me to think that way.
I mean, I guess it really is. I mean, like I also didn't get, I never got into sports, like, like team sports or like that. I don't, I like to play games. I like to play sports with people, like I played, I'm not good at them, but I played Little League baseball. I played stuff like that with a kid. I enjoy playing games, but like, I don't root for the Cowboys. I live in Texas. I don't root for the Cowboys. I don't give a fuck. I don't care who wins the Super Bowl. It doesn't matter to me. It's just a bunch of rich people playing games stuff like that. It's just like I don't identify with it, and I don't like, and I know people that like their whole I've known, I don't know, currently don't know anybody like that, but I've known people that their whole life is identifying as a Cowboys fan. Like it's just like like their whole thing is like they like the Cowboys, like that's their identity, and it's just weird to me. Like what? How is that an identity for you? Like what does that mean? Like and now everybody's so obsessed with it, and so like it's not just political, but it's important. Like everyone wants you to announce your pronouns and all this stuff like that. Like and like everyone has to respect everyone's identities and stuff like that. And like I could respect you as a person, but like why do I have to respect you as this person? Like I mean,
especially when you can't even see it. I don't see the identity they're seeing in their head. They're subjective. I can't see it. I don't know what I'm respecting or acknowledging.
And like they get like people get offended. Like what's that guy the not the Dylan Mulvaney one, but not Dylan Mulvaney, but the other one that's like the guy that's
Jeffrey Marsh.
Oh yeah, Marsh. Yeah, that's his name. Like someone like that. Like like I mean, he always like it seems like I've only seen clips, so I don't follow him or anything. But like it seems like he has a lot of stuff about he wants to be treated like a respectful, normal person kind of thing. But I mean, come on, you're clearly going against
right. Respect is earned. You can't force people to see you a certain way or feel a certain way about you.
I know it's like especially whenever you're presenting yourself in such a against the grain kind of way. I mean, like I've been an against the grain kind of person my whole life and stuff like that. People called me freak. I've been called freak for
I was a freak.
My whole I'm a freak. I'm growing up, and I mean tons of people. I was always I had never attracted to men, but people called me gay a lot of times because I didn't really date girls until I got a lot older and stuff like that. I really didn't care about dating and relationships like that much when I was younger. I was more focused on like music and other stuff that I was interested in. I just didn't care much. But so like people called me gay and stuff like that, and it didn't really bother me. It's like I didn't really understand what it meant until I got a lot older and I really thought about it. And I was like, well, am I gay? And I was like, well. There was something I had to really think about because like I didn't really give it much thought, and I was like, well, I've never attracted to Ben, so I guess I'm not. And that was it. It's just like it seemed like it's a pretty simple thing. If I was a dude and I attracted to men, then I'd be gay, or attracted to both, I'd be bi or whatever. And I just don't understand like why it matters. Like I didn't feel the need to like to reassert,
especially if you know yourself, which it sounds like you did.
Yeah, I did, and like a lot of people don't. I know that. I know there's a lot of people that just don't know who they are. I guess I do feel for those people. I guess that is a lot of it. That is why they did. I think comes from people feel really lost in today's society. I mean, it's kind of weird. I wonder that I think it's been mentioned by a few people now. Like, it does make me wonder if like I've always been very anti-religious, even though I have like some spiritual views and stuff like that like kind of categorize me as like I guess in the category of a Christian in a sense, even though I don't really identify as a Christian, but in any sense. But like that people would probably categorize me like that just. Even though I'd also be a heretic at the same time, but I really do wonder if like the loss of religion in society has like, I don't know, maybe just given people less a sense of purpose or sense of like, without that sense of like something over them or something like that. And like, I hate religion. Like religion is like my least favorite things in the world because I feel like it's caused way more harm than good in like terms of like, like just like the people being ideal. I feel like wokeism is now anyway. It's another religion. It's like this like ideological purity kind of thing. It's just like we've replaced like one kind of religion with another.
One of the theories.
Yeah, it's really, and I hate that. It's like I've always been like kind of person that's like I feel like I should be celebrating the fact that like religion isn't as prominent anymore. Instead, I feel like now it kind of was maybe for the best. Like I hate that. I hate that when like my anti-establishment tendencies, or thoughts or motivations like that, those kind of things have started coming true, and then it turns out that they're bad for society. They're bad for everyone. It's like that really sucks to see because like I've always been like I've always felt like religion was really bad for everyone. I thought it was always it made people stupid, stuff like that, and
I used to think that too.
Yeah, and it's just now I'm like maybe even though I mean church certainly isn't for me. I don't go to church, but maybe a lot of people do need to go back to church.
I have a completely different view on it now, and a much greater respect for it. I see the value in it.
Yeah,
especially when compare. Like I would pick religion over the woke stuff any day.
Oh, definitely, absolutely. I mean, and I do. I mean, I do. I just like I heard you talking Paul, like your own sense of religion, everything is like something you kind of developed yourself. Like I have my own, like, my own thing where I developed this whole, like, Christianity was something for me. I grew up in Christianity. I grew up in a very conservative Christian household in the South. So I mean, and despite that, like it's really weird. Like despite growing up in southern Texas and you're from the South too, right?
Louisiana.
Yeah, Louisiana. Yeah. It's really weird the fact that I've seen a lot more racism and stuff like that, like much.
Yeah, the real kind.
Like the real kind. Yeah, exactly. I grew up around. I mean, I grew up in communities with like lots of Black people, lots of Mexican people, stuff like that. I grew up around all sorts of much more diverse, especially much more diverse down in Texas than it was when I lived further up north. I've lived in Nevada and stuff like that.
Seattle's the most segregated place I've ever lived.
Yeah, I've heard that before. I've never been that far up north, but yeah, I've heard that before. I think you said at one point you lived in Las Vegas too. I hear that thing.
For 8 years.
Yeah, I lived
Oh,
Las Vegas. I lived in Las Vegas for 7 years. That's where me and my wife.
When were you there?
Man, I'm trying to remember the exact dates now.
I was there in 2000s.
Yeah, I mean it was 2000s, but it wasn't. It was like 2006, 2005, like 2005 through. I was there from 2005 through. Yeah, you were there. Through like I guess 2000. Trying to think of it's like through like my daughter was born there. My daughter was born there in 2007, and we lived there for another 2 years after that. So we lived there another. So I left in 2009 or so. Like when the economy crashed, man. Like when
I remember after that housing crisis,
2008. Yeah, man. After 2008, man, it was like it turned. Like that city was so crazy and growing at that time. You were there too, so like I mean, you remember how fast like stuff would go up.
I loved it.
Yeah, it was great because like you'd go by, you'd drive by one day and you see construction starting on a place, and 2 days later the place would just be there.
The city was constantly rebuilding itself, like
it was insane.
Half a year,
and it went from like overnight. Like I worked for a place that did data cable installation at the time of that thing hit, and I was like running their warehouse and doing all this other stuff, and like that housing crisis hit, and like they didn't just lay off like the newest people, they laid off like half the company in one day, and like just it was like one day like I called in and was like, yep, we have to get rid of I'm sorry, we have to let all of you go, and like was I laid off that whole thing, and then there was just no jobs. Like it was like I couldn't get hired at a fast food place after that. Like it was just like I was overqualified for those jobs, and then like the other jobs that I was qualified for, they just didn't exist anymore because everyone was all fired, and like all the construction. I remember that there was like this one construction site that was just the road from our house that just started going up like a few weeks before that happened, or like a week before that happened, and like they just put up like the beams and it stayed like that for a year. Like the next year that we were there, it's froze in that one spot. They put like the steel frame for a couple of things that just stuck right there for like a year, just like I think it started rusting, and it fell apart eventually. It was just like crazy. It was like just like things like they just didn't even bother trying to like recover anything. They just stopped. It was crazy, man. It was a crazy time. Like we ended up having to retreat back to Texas at the time. We went to stay with my parents for a while, and we ended up out here in Dallas. Like I don't know, after being out there for about 7 years. Seems like I have a cycle of like 7 years. So it was like about 7 years in Vegas, about 7 years in Texas, and about 7 years have been here. And yeah, it's been crazy. Like we were doing pretty well here in Dallas for a while until mental health stuff happened and everything. All that stuff that happened the last couple years. Like we were doing pretty well, but it's rough trying to find a way to like survive out there if you can't go out and do manual labor these days. It really is.
Well, I hope that something happens for you and you kind of get back on track. Is there anything else you want to wrap up with or promote or announce?
No, I don't have anything to promote. Like I don't have any presence online. I don't have any. I haven't done any. I at one point I was going to start doing streaming stuff like a long time ago. That's all fell apart. But, the only thing I have any notability for online is like if anyone wants to like see something I did in the past. I did used to write for Cracked.com.
Oh, that's right. I used to read Cracked, the website.
Yeah, the website. Yeah, I used to write for Cracked.com. I have about 8 articles that I wrote on there. I had one that actually did really well. That was talked about the a movie that I said was a prequel to an unofficial prequel to Fight Club. So a lot of like movie. Some of the articles were history based, some were pop culture based, different stuff. But that's the only thing I really did on there. I really done much online. I have a SoundCloud that I put some stuff up a long time ago, but it's
Oh,
nothing I'm really trying to, nothing I'm really necessarily trying to promote. Like I said, just like remnants of my past that have ended up online. I hope this is the first, kind of like, conversation I have like this. I think there's a lot of things to discuss out there. I hope that you and me can have another conversation in the future too, because I'd really like to
yeah.
talk to you about your religious stuff and mine, because I think we'd have a lot of interesting things to say, because I really like where you're coming from, like where your thing is based on like the anti-establishment kind of like, the anti-authoritarian stuff, because I'm really very much the same way. It's just, I think it's fascinating how we can both have such like on the surface, like diametrically opposed labels. Like, you consider yourself Satanist. I don't really consider myself a Christian, but at the same time, that's where I fit into the best. If I have to fit myself in categories, where I fit into the best. And I just think it's funny that we could have those two like things that, yeah, I think we have more in common with each other in our philosophies than I would with any other Christian. And you probably,
I get that a lot.
Yeah, it's just
I have a lot in
insane.
common with Christians that I've found nowadays that surprises me.
Yeah, I mean, well, my thing is like I'm really anti-religious, which is like most Christians are not anti-religious anyway. And like I'm also, I believe my sense of Christianity has entirely to do with like I do believe in Christ as a person. It's something, it's like a gut thing for me that like I grew up in that world and tried very hard to rebel against it, and went the opposite way from it for a long time, and just I couldn't. There's just like that one thing about it, but there's a lot. I also couldn't deal with there's a lot of contradictions in Christianity that really bothered me. And like over time, I basically researched my way out of it. I researched my way out of it until I found like the stuff that made sense to me. And I fully would admit to anyone, like, I'm crazy. I'm a delusional person when it comes to that stuff. I mean, it's not, you don't have to take it seriously. No one has to look at like my particular cosmology of Christianity and think that it's right. I mean, I actually don't talk about it much just because I feel like either people would think I was trying to start a cult, or I actually would actually start one. I don't want to do that. So, yeah. And I have some unique ideas about this sort of thing that I don't even know. Like, I know that people, that's why I said I would be a heretic to most Christians. I absolutely, like my beliefs fall more along lines of Gnosticism, really.
Oh yeah. Well, I consider myself a satanic Gnostic, so maybe that's the
So,
common.
there
Yeah,
we are.
we'll definitely have to talk more.
I would consider myself a Christian Gnostic. You sort of say that. This is perfect. Yeah,
Okay.
like we find the common ground in the Gnostic part. Which I think this really, if you get past the surface level parts of it, like they are very similar. I mean, like in terms of our beliefs are very similar. It's just like I think we have a different organizing principle.
Yeah, to me it's all mythology, and Christ is
Yeah.
not a bad mythological figure to follow at all.
No, I don't think
And
so.
it's just we're using different frameworks, but I think underground, it's the same connections.
Yeah, I think that's important, because I think we're all that's an important thing for people to do, that to understand. I've never seen. I've always, my whole life, I've always been friends with and been in groups of friends that all had all different kinds of beliefs and stuff like that. I like the way the world is right now. They're being this ideological purity thing where everyone's got to be like on this like same page of everything all the time, otherwise you're out of the group kind of thing. I just like, man, it's like weird to me. I don't have many friends anymore, like, and not because of that, just because of everything that's happened the last few years. I just have lost touch with a lot of people. But it's just like, it's crazy to me to think that, like, I could go out and become, get involved in a group of friends and then like get excommunicated from that group of friends the same way like they used to do to people in churches. Like,
Yeah, cancel.
yeah, you canceled and excommunicated from these groups. It's just like what's going on? Like, why is everyone more religious now, despite the fact that no one's in church anymore? Anyway,
It's
yeah.
the Puritans, yeah.
Yeah, well,
Well,
anyway, that's all I have to say, really. I guess the moment I look forward to talking in the future. But
yeah, I have to run to my men's group too.
Great.
A few minutes. So thank you so much. This is a great
Thank you.
talk. We'll do it
Thank you.
again, and
Okay.
I'll see you on Discord.
See you on Discord, man. Thanks. Bye.
Okay.